Lawmakers in New York are urging the state agency to open up the emergency rental assistance program. And one landlord is so fed up that he has spray painted his own roof to bring attention to the amount of money that he is owed due to the eviction moratorium. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have a couple of interesting articles for you today, but before we get started, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll keep bringing you more interesting articles from all across the country about the eviction moratorium and things that are of interest to landlords. So, the first article I have for you today is called Lawmakers Urge State Agency to Open Emergency Rental Assistance Applications. And it looks like they meant to write state, but there was a typo and they wrote stage agency. These newspaper people gotta be a little more careful when they do their editing, because little typos like that, and the title doesn't really make much sense. The big problem I have right now is that a lot of these states, they have the money to start these emergency rental assistance programs to help the tenants and to help the landlords, but they haven't actually distributed any of the money. So here in Nebraska, they have more money waiting, and they're begging landlords who are struggling right now to go ahead and put the applications in so that they can get reimbursed for rent that they're owed. But up in states like New York, they haven't distributed anything. So they have this eviction moratorium that they keep extending, and they haven't even given any money to landlords to make sure that they can get by and that they're not struggling. And that's insane. I mean, it's been over a year since all this started, and not a penny has been distributed yet. Come on, give me a break. What's going on? Okay, you can't keep extending an eviction moratorium and expect landlords to just pull all this money out of their own pockets. Despite $2.4 billion allocated to it in this year's budget in early April, New York's emergency rental assistance program is still not accepting applications. State legislators Sean Ryan and Bill Conrad are urging the State Office of Temporary Disability to open up the program in time for June 1st rent payments. Chris Burton, who manages over 24 rental units in the city of Buffalo with his wife Allison, said with pandemic hardships facing tenants, it's been a tough time for both sides. Yeah, it's really, really tough for both sides right now. And it's pretty much inexcusable that a state government wouldn't have some sort of rental assistance available when they keep extending the eviction moratorium, okay? I mean, they're like, okay, these renters need protection. Well, who is paying for this protection? Nothing is free. They still demand that you pay your property taxes. They still demand that you pay you have insurance. They still demand that you provide maintenance for these properties. A lot of the properties, you'll have to pay utilities for the tenants, yet there's nothing, and I mean nothing, coming in. So that means that a landlord has to pull all of that money out of their own pocket. And a lot of these landlords just can't do it. That's why landlords are being pushed into bankruptcy right now. That's why landlords are being pushed into foreclosure right now. And that's why especially small landlords are struggling, especially small landlords, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that the big landlords aren't struggling too, but you're going to hear a lot of stories about small landlords coming out because we're the ones who don't have that money, that emergency reserve, to handle over a year of non-rent payment. We really believe in what we're doing with having housing that folks can be proud of. We've definitely felt the strain and been squeezed in the middle of these past months, with some of our folks not able to make the rent payments due to their hardships, Burton said. We've been doing everything on our side to keep the utilities running, the mortgages covered. Certainly, it's been a struggle. We are reliant on the rent payments each month. We're very much just looking for a change and a way forward. The money is there. The agency is there. All that's needed is state regulations to distribute it. That's the message that State Senator Ryan on beginning a rent relief program in New York. He said the program is designed to assist middle-class and working-class renters and their landlords, who in Buffalo are often not millionaires themselves. We all know the Buffalo story. It's not uncommon for teachers, firefighters, or county workers to own a double or two, said Ryan. They make it a part-time job, often to get money for college tuition or to supplement their salaries a little bit. But these are not folks with big deep pockets. These are people where if a tenant misses a few months' rent, they're going to feel it themselves. Yeah, and that's the story of most small landlords, okay? They are going to feel it when you're missing a few months' rent. And so when they have these eviction moratoriums in place and they're like, hey, we're going to, let the tenants stay for free. Well, we're not a homeless shelter. Landlords are not homeless shelters. They're not social service providers. They cannot exist forever on someone else, with someone else paying their bills. So, for an example, for people who don't seem to understand this point, I ask that if you're a renter, go ahead, take in a homeless person, okay? Take that person into your house. I want you to pay for their housing. I want you to make sure that they always have somewhere to stay. Even if they tear your place up, you can't get rid of them. Okay, and you pay for their electricity, you pay for their water bill, you pay for their trash, and if they tear something up, you go ahead and do all the repairs. And this is in your place, whatever it is, and after a while you start to realize, well, these bills are piling up and I'm not getting any relief. Why am I doing this? Well, how do you think we feel? That's exactly how we feel. And it's crazy to think that a government would do this to people, okay? It's just not right. Assemblymember Conrad said the State Office of Temporary Disability, who has been tasked with administering the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, needs to start opening up applications before a housing crisis occurs. The state issued a moratorium on evictions with hopes of alleviating the pressure on renters who were suddenly out of work through no fault of their own, said Conrad. But we can't ignore the consequences this has on landlords, especially those here in Western New York, many of whom invest in a property or two as a means of supplementing their income or preparing for retirement. When I think of what causes this problem in places like New York, all I can think of is excessive bureaucracy, okay? Excessive bureaucracy. That means that there's too much government, okay? They can't distribute the money quickly or efficiently because there's so many hands in this pot. There's so many people who are trying to figure out how this money should be distributed, what needs to be done. That's the reason why when you go up to places like New York, the taxes are so high, because there's so much government and there's so many people trying to make a decision that should be relatively simple. And that's why you go to places outside of New York, it's a completely different story. You'll have places like here where I live in Nebraska, and they can get that money distributed quickly and efficiently. They can make sure that landlords are paid, and they'll have more money left over than they know what to do with, because they don't have this huge bloated bureaucracy like they do up in New York. That's why it's scary for people who are landlords up there, especially in places outside of New York City, because do you really think that state lawmakers are very worried about what's going on in Buffalo or Rochester or upstate New York? No, they're focused on New York City. They're focused on that metro area up there because that's where the majority of the population lives. And a lot of the other landlords, they just get left out. So, it's horrible, hearing a lot of the things that are going on up there. And the people in the other cities in New York, they just get dragged along with the giant mess. All right, so the next article I have for you, and it comes out of WKBY Buffalo, and that's up in New York, and it says, Lancaster landlord spray paints property showing tenant's name and rent debt. Now, I know there's a lot of frustrated landlords out there right now, but this landlord seems to have gone to the extreme, and he spray painted the tenant's name and how much that tenant owes him on the roof of the property. I mean, that's a little bit going far, and I don't think it would accomplish much other than basically vandalizing, damaging your own property. I don't think that that's going to shame the tenant in any way, but let's get into this article, see what it says. We can't just sit back idle and let this government do what they're doing. Kevin Nowak Sr. is at his wit's end. The Lancaster property owner said some tenants have fallen behind on rent, and he has no recourse because of the state's eviction moratorium. I know I can't evict them. I can't even take them to small claims court to get $3,000 for, let's say, an $11,000 claim. So he's taking matter into his own hands and exposing the tenant's debt. He spray painted the roof of one tenant's home with their names and what they owe. Lisa and Ray owe $11,000 in rent. MAGA, the roof reads. I'm not lying. I'm not calling anybody any names. I'm just saying so-and-so owes this much in rent, Nowak Sr. explained. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, if I could talk to this dude, I'm like, dude, that's going a little bit too far. You know, I know these people. It bothers you that they owe you rent, but spray painting their names and how much they owe you on the roof, it's not going to get you your money. Okay, it's not going to accomplish the goal. Only thing it's going to do is, well, it's going to make you look a little bit crazy. That's the first thing. Two, people, they're going to say that you're harassing them, and you know that's not what you want. That's not going to do what you're hoping to do. I mean, I know you're frustrated, but simply put, it is the wrong course of action. And yeah, it got attention. It brought attention to the subject, but you know, you just look a little bit crazy. Okay. Nowak Sr. owns about 50 properties across Erie County. The one on Central Avenue isn't the only one where he's owed back rent. Nowak Sr. said a former tenant on Livingston Street owes him more than $10,000 in rent. He spray painted the tenant's name and his debt on the front of the building last week. This is not helping him. It's not going to get him anything, said neighbor Nicole McMurray. Yeah, I agree with the neighbor. It's not helping him. He's not going to accomplish anything by spray painting people's names and how much they owe him on the property. You know, it's going to cost him money, in fact, because he's going to have to paint over it and fix it himself. Okay, so that's kind of dumb. Frustration is one thing, and I've met a lot of landlords and a lot of, you know, there's a few eccentrics in there. So when I see a story like this, it's like, okay, this guy, you know, he's losing it. You know, he's probably not doing very well overall because he is so behind on rent payments. You know, like I know that when I miss just a small amount of rent from a tenant, it can throw my finances for an entire month off. So when you have, you know, already he has 2 tenants who owe him tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, I don't know how much he's owed all across his 50 rental properties, but you know, it could easily be enough to just, you know, ruin him financially for more than a year. And obviously, just like that article I just went over, New York State hasn't paid any rental assistance to landlords yet. So he's pulling all this money out of his own pocket. And that can be just destructive. This is a business. So his business is being pushed into bankruptcy. So yeah, he has good reason to be frustrated. He's just going about handling it the wrong way. McMurray said she's called the village code enforcement officer several times to complain about the graffiti. I just don't understand why he's allowed to take it this far. He's defacing Lancaster and not just the houses, McMurray said. According to the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, on average, renters owe $8,150 in unpaid rent. Nowak Sr. believes the problem is a product of a government policy. I don't mean to do this to be vengeful to the people themselves. I'm frustrated with the government. Neither code enforcement or the Lancaster Village Mayor responded to our inquiries. Legal experts say Nowak Sr. isn't breaking any laws. Well, I mean, if he's not breaking any laws, I mean, he can do what he wants, but I don't see the point. I don't see the point because it's a repair that he's required to do. So, yeah, I wouldn't suggest other landlords go about it this way. Instead, you know, seek legal ways to remove the tenant. Hold on for as long as you can. If you need to, try to get mortgage forbearance. You know, there's not much you can do in a situation like this, but you know, hold on tight. Okay, help is coming. It might not come when you need it to come, but it is coming. And if you have to, you know, worst case scenario, try to sell it to another investor who might be able to hold on a bit longer than you can. But man, these are the extremes that a lot of landlords are just pushed to right now. You know, it's driving us crazy. Okay, this whole situation is driving us crazy. I don't have to deal with these issues right now. Fortunately, you know, there are ways to still remove tenants here in Nebraska. But I feel for these landlords up in places like New York. This is insane, and I hope that with all the restrictions and everything coming to an end, that very, very soon the eviction moratorium will be over.